Welcome to Lunch with Legends. Tracer Finn. This is the coolest one ever because we're not at a restaurant, Brian guessed. We are literally at Tracer's house. He purchased a lunch. Usually it's on me. I didn't tell him. I benefit. He bought me lunch. We'll talk about that later. Real quickly, this episode is brought to you by Mongoose Bicycles. Why? Because they're my new co-sponsor. And if you go to mongoose.com right now, there's a 50% off flash sale until the 7th. So get on it right away. If you guys are getting up there like me, I'm 58 next week, get on a bike. Just get a Mongoose. Just ride around. Trust me, he and I know once those feelings start going, forget it. You're going to want to ride. You don't have to race. If you want to race, that's fine. Get on a bike. Longevity. Also, September 27th, New Jersey BMX Hall of Fame, second annual. Come on out for that. If you're in that area, it's going to be possibly, almost locked down, 99%. Fort Lee, New Jersey. We're adding a bunch of things this year. The G District. That was an NBA thing where if you were Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, you were in the G District. We're bringing the G District into our Hall of Fame. So now we can expand and bring a whole East Coast into the mix. Tracer Finn's here. Going to be awesome. It's Double Down Vegas. I got Gary Loren after this. I was out here for work. I said, I gotta hear the history. So here we go. Lunch with Legends merchandise is available. We got hats and shirts. I'm rocking a Charlie Litsky shirt today, straight out of Jersey. Old school. Charlie, he knows. We got stories ahead of us. Tracer Finn is here. I'm in his house. Let's do this. Welcome to the show, Tracer.
Oh, thank you. And you saw that I cooked you a beautiful lunch.
You sure did. I always start off the show with this. Tell me your first recollection of bicycling. Not necessarily BMX. What was your first bike and what year?
My parents took me to a Schwinn shop. I mean, I always had little bikes, but my parents took me to a Schwinn shop, and my brother got the cool Stingray, and they thought it'd be a good idea if I got the, I think it was the Fastback. It had the gears. It had like a 21-inch wheel, and with a slick. But it wasn't. Yeah. It had gears, but it wasn't a moto bike. So I sort of felt like that's the first time I went, man, this isn't cool enough. So I got out the rattle can, started, tearing stuff off it. Took the speedometer off. Took every. It was a street bike. And
did it have the shifter? In the center?
Mine didn't. Mine had a three-speed. Like I think it was in the hub because it had a little chain into the hub. So I think it was a 3-speed. Wow. And so I just stripped it down, and my parents went, "What'd you do?" And I'm like, "I just made this thing cool." And so that's the first time I went, I have a problem, with it, and thought.
And what year was that?
Wow, I probably got to the Schwinn shop when I was probably 6 or 7, and that was the start of like making it happen.
Wow.
Like doing BMX stuff. 70, 71.
No way.
Yeah, because I grew up in the Mesa, literally by a rancho, and it was by El Cajon, so everybody was a moto head.
Yep.
We could hear
zone.
Yeah, everybody raced and rode motos, and so we got a lot of bleed over from that moto scene. Wow. So before I even came to Vegas, that was the deal. Fat back tire, paint your stuff black, doing wheelies, getting rid of your banana seat, trying to find a single seat off of a Kneider 10-speed, just.
Yeah, so I thought the same thing when my first bike was a fat seat that said MX.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And we put fenders on it.
Yeah, it was orange MX with the crosshatch.
Fenders and wide bars because we wanted to be motorcycle guys. And then once you ride it and you're like, this is not working, then you want to all of a sudden become like the 10-speed seat and all that stuff. So.
Yeah. What's funny is I have a Stingray now with no crossbar. Wow. And it scares me to death. Because now, even if it's just a Galindo crossbar, that's for you. Chains, even just mentally having a crossbar, because I look at those bars and I go, "Oh, that's," because we've seen it. You've seen the bars or the stem snap. So, but that's where I got my moto, was being around it, and it was really San Diego area.
So your heroes were all motocross,
We go to motorcycle races.
Who do you remember seeing?
I'll tell you, and I haven't met him yet, and if somebody knows him, tell him to get a hold of me. Eric Kehoe.
No, I got a Kehoe connection for you.
Oh yeah, because
I do.
he raced. When I got older, we lived in Colorado for like 6 months, and I guess I went to Thunder Valley, or I guess when you're a kid, I had a YZ80 at the time, and I went and saw George Holland and Eric Kehoe, XR, YZ, full on, just,
Wow.
to me they were 450s, but you're seeing those minis, and those guys were hauling, and it was epic. Like I just went, I want to race Moto, because they were so, Eric rode the YZ and Holland rode for Holland Honda, and I thought it was Holland Honda. So that's where I got the really moto bug.
Okay,
was
I have
seeing
a George Holland jersey.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would know. I mean, that literally is 70, probably 73-ish.
Yeah, this was when he was on Honda, so this was much later.
Yeah.
But you're living in the mecca of, right? So what's your first recollection of BMX in San Diego?
Well, I'll have to say everybody else is the same as Evel Knievel.
Okay.
Because there was some construction, and we would get the doors that they didn't have the doors hardware on them yet.
Okay.
And then we lay them down on the sawhorse and just jump the doors, just full click, just hit them. And, now we look back and I go, just think if you had your doors all lined up, all set up, all perfect, and some kids drag them out and put knobby tire treads on them. But my brother, because I had an older brother who was actually really good on a bike and super cool, and he rode with the older guys. So really, it's just like so many people that got good is they had an older brother to pave the way.
Yeah.
So they would ride and jump, and I would try and do the same.
Amazing.
Yeah. So we sort of raised heck on our bikes and rode all.
And
day.
it was all day.
All day.
It seems like we were all similar.
All
we would
day.
leave at 10. We'd go to the dirt jumps. If not, we'd make our own, get a Slurpee, get the sugar, and keep going until the streetlights came on. It seems to be a common thread for everybody. I was in New Jersey doing this. You're doing it in San Diego. Like, that's just what we did.
Yeah.
I started in 79. But you for sure outlast me on that. But,
well, it was just where every kid started is your Stingray. Well, mine was a fastback.
Mine was an AMF.
Yeah. And then I got a Huffy and, just sort of went through that.
Okay. What was your first real race bike where you didn't start racing, you're only jumping, right? What?
Oh, I was just jumping.
Just jumping.
I had, we would go to the speedway races, and so we got to see the cool stuff, and my dad had a connection with, he sponsored a race car, and so we'd go to the races and the drag races, and so I sort of got the racing, but I was like a sideshow. Like in my head was that Evel Knievel sideshow. Oh, I'd love to jump, 3 dogs and 2 chickens in pen, just for the fun of it.
True fact, I still have my scramble van in the windup. I still have it.
Oh, awesome! I saw somebody do that. They put a drill on it, and I just saw it like last week. They started him up with the drill. They hooked a drill to the windup, and he was.
Wow.
And I went, I felt bad for the toy because you're like, you break those forks and they're junk. But that was where I got the bug, was really San Diego and riding with my brother, and sort of we'd all one up each other, and gang of a dozen kids. You're right. You're right where the 7-Eleven was, and we maybe had $1 between us, and you'd get a couple Slurpees and you'd hang out and ride and drink out of hoses. I saw.
Yes,
drink out of hoses.
That's the generation I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So what makes you want to take it to another level and maybe start racing? How does racing come into your life?
I ended up moving to Denver with my mom when they split up, and my mom bought me a motorcycle, sort of because they knew Don Vesco. They knew somebody that raced, and they thought the motorcycle thing was a good carrot, and so I started riding motorcycles, and I I got pretty good. At 10, I had a YZ80B, and so it was the first year of the 5-speed. And like so many of these guys' stories that I read about and I'm a fan of, they started in moto. And when I moved to Vegas, I brought my motorcycle, found out who put on the races, and then did everything I needed, left my motorcycle at their house, got it all set up. My parents said, no, I'm not going to sign, and then I went, and they ran the bike races, the Williams. So they ran, so I would go out, ride my motorcycle around in the desert, and then I would help them throw tires for the motorcycle races. And then they got us free. I got to race BMX.
Okay.
So I went, so I certainly didn't come in hot like a racer.
You weren't seeking it out. It fell into your lap.
Yeah,
which is insane if you think about how talented you were.
Oh,
are.
I think it was just going from a heavy motorcycle jumping to a bike and having, I'm paying for it now, but rubber knees at the time, and you just.
So when you leave San Diego, you're leaving your BMX scene behind. It didn't matter to you because you were into motorcycles, and you go to Denver, and then you get your motorcycle there. So BMX kind of was in, but then it kind of drifted, right? You did more moto, and then it came back in Vegas, right?
Yeah. Well,
so how odd? That's a little odd.
When we moved to Denver, my brother and I both got motorcycles, so we were just.
BMX
that was it.
Matter.
We were just
yeah.
But then we lived on a hill. We would put on trick shows on our bicycles.
Wow.
And take the tire off the rim, and put it back on, and pour gasoline in the street and try and in my head I'm thinking, stunt show, just right back to it. I'm thinking stunt show.
Yeah.
And so we'd
skid
as far so you could skid the farthest on a rim, and we would pull each other behind the motorcycles, and stupid time.
So I'm saying that you could have taken Diz's job when you were at CW. You could have gone on the road with him. You could have.
No, I never landed a thing in my life. These guys could kick turn with the best of them.
You're doing freestyle in a way, but you're doing more Evel Knievel.
Yeah, we were just, all the neighbor kids would line the street, and we'd do stupid stuff, and my brother would pull me on his motorcycle, and we had a big wheel that we tied to the motorcycles, and would just drag it around the street and put a piece of carpet on it so we could.
So what's crazy is you're an extreme sports guy that it nothing to do with racing. You were more of a showman. It's in your DNA, but you were more of a showman than you were a racer. But you go on. You're in the Hall of Fame. Congrats. You go on to do racing. You're really good at it. But in the beginning, it wasn't even.
No.
You didn't want to go. Hey, I'm going to race these guys. You were like, I want to create a show.
I thought we just. I'll be honest, and I'll say the guy's name. Rest in peace. Who got me to be a racer his name was Tim Orm.
Okay.
And he, because they would have 3 motos, a jump contest, a bunny hop contest, a wheelie contest. My first trophy, which I'll show you because Brian Lopes brought his, so I have mine out, and my first trophy was for a wheelie contest. So I didn't win. Like, we'd race 5 motos, I'd get like 7th out of 11 people. I just, truthfully, it was rubber band start.
Yeah.
I was like 11 or so, and I just took off. I didn't. The fast guys would run to the inside, watch the guy's hand, and I'm just going. I thought it was all fun.
Yeah.
And then you turn expert, and then all of a sudden this guy's going, just being a chump to me and saying, "Oh, you suck," and I went, "Oh," and all of a sudden I went, if I get fast, and I know this like the back of my hand. I said, if I ever get fast, I'm never going to be like that.
Oh, that's cool.
And I went, and then I started beating him, and he sort of went off the rails, so I got ahead of him quick. But he's the one who made me. I went, oh, this racing takes aggro, and I would just pedal and go, all right, okay, it was fun racing in a pack, and you'd hit the, I'm like, all right, here comes a jump, I got clear, just. Do whatever.
Here's the thing that trips me out is you could have been like Woody. Woody started in BMX and went to freestyle.
Right.
It seems like your natural progression would have been freestyle.
If it was, I would say
right?
If you could get I think the first person that really did it was Fuzzy Hall. you know, and there wasn't anybody in when I was. Well, you saw some of the jumps I did were stupid, but we were trying to do what they ended up doing later,
Right.
you know, and we would just crash our brains out. And
Do you think, because you were good, you're great, and at a time when freestyle took off, were you on CW at that time? Because I'm thinking maybe the timing was off. You probably would have been into freestyle if the timing was right, but it wasn't.
yeah, I ended up, you know, just fast forwarding to working for Specialized and with TJ traveling and doing X Games and Gravity Games, and I'm sitting on the rolling. Everybody's out there. The gnarlier you get, the louder the crowd is, and every one of the competitors that you're against are high-fiving you for sticking it out there. You didn't. You might have had more fun not sticking a trick and getting seventh.
You sound like Magoo right there. The louder you get, the crazier the get.
Yeah. Oh, I have a Magoo story that you brought up too. But that's how I look back. I go, wow, I dug it so much because I saw what it became. And then I respected it. Like I never said, oh, I could do that. I go, oh, you try, you know, but there wasn't, you know, it's not like I do a rebel run and hit some 28-foot gap backflip. You know, leave that to the pros.
Sure.
But you know, that was where I was chasing was jumping, because we go riding and all we did was ride to find a jump spot. We didn't ride to train.
It's so fascinating, right? Because I see a lot of people that did. Look at Moeller. He started out as a racer, his company's now based on jumping and trail riding and that, and he hit it the timing right.
Yeah,
so
and he was good.
It's interesting that there's something in you, but that it was just you're working your way through.
Yeah,
That's
it wasn't because I wasn't factory sponsored till I was 17 years old.
Amazing.
So it wasn't like, and I'm going to California all the time, just sort of racing, and then you go, oh, you have to get fast. You have to be fast to get a meal ticket to go to the next race. You know, you have to start making the main events and not just end up at a sideshow on the jumps, because no one would, I don't want to say write you a check, but no one would fly you anywhere. So.
And your age class, if I remember, was absolutely ridiculous. It was like Eddie King, right?
Yeah.
Paulson, Pistol.
It was, boy, you know what? I'll say 10 guys and I'll leave 10 out, just because there's just, in my straight up age class was Eddie, Paulson, Miranda was there for a bit, Andy Patterson, Lee Medlin, and then there's a dozen other guys. Then there's the guys that were we'd race 14 over open. Charlie, Gary,
Farside,
Pistol,
right, for a little while.
Farside, yeah. When I'd race MBL,
my God, and they're all like that's all.
They're all
10 Hall of Famers.
Oh,
like,
Goss
that's
Rao
all.
and first straight aficionados, and you're looking at some guy that's looking for the biggest jump on the track. You know,
And
these
Daryl
guys.
Young too, right?
Daryl, well, not. I think I was too far ahead of him, age-wise. But in the opens, it's game on. I mean, you look at some of these finals, and every one of those guys went on to be, you know,
Iconic.
stamped career of success. You know, and
Pete and Gary
they did okay. Yeah, they did okay. And you know what's cool is we run into these guys now, and they're all so nice to me. You know,
Well, you're also known for being a nice guy.
well, the friendships, you know, like it wasn't. We'll talk an hour, not about BMX, and then we can talk till the sun goes down about BMX. You know, it just depends who started the conversation, what we're talking about. But I definitely, when I got to Vegas, that's when I started racing, and then the tours would come through, like the tour you're talking about, the Schwinn tour. Like these things would come through Vegas.
Wow.
And
right? What's your earliest recollection of Vegas BMX? Because it's fascinating to me. I was in Jersey, then I went to Orange County and did the whole Orange Y thing. But I only came out here for a couple races a year, right?
Yeah.
But I'm always interested in the history. What can you remember going back as far in your memory?
Oh, as far as it goes, was our local scene. We had over 1,000 riders before NBA. It was just Las Vegas BMX Club. I think I'll give you a sticker. Make sure when we go in my garage, because I'll give a shout out now to the first number one. His name's Sam Meek, and he would go to California, and he was our number one. He was sponsored by FMF, you know, and he had an FMF. His bike was tight. He was stylish. He had the gear, and he was, you know, I just went, I want to be like that.
Yeah, Sal's in there for me. That's very
yeah. I just went, okay, what does it take, you know? And but we would race out in the desert, and we'd be out there 4 or 5 hours easily, because you did 5 motos. So and there was 10, 12 people on the rubber band start, so they'd have to tally. They would have an intermission to tally the points, and we're out in the middle of nowhere, desert, not a drinking fountain, not a food station or a bit of shade, unless you could dive in the back of somebody's van, you know that. But it was so hillbilly fun. Like there was no
Wild West stuff.
Yeah, and it was. You see how warm it is today? We're probably 15 degrees less than what it usually is right now, and we would ride all day long. Like we would ride home from the races, and they were probably an hour from here now with traffic, but it was we'd ride 15, 20 miles after the races. No sunblock, no hat, no sunglasses, you know. It was Williams Raceway, and we would race the downhill parts of the motorcycle tracks. So it was it was just silt, and then caliche, hard spot, and then you'd plow into a corner and it'd poof. And there was we had a water truck. They would park the water truck, and the water hole would be wherever it was leaking.
Nice.
You know, it would either leak, you know, you put it on the infield and the water would go through.
So there wasn't, as far as you can remember, there was no BMX track. It was a motorcycle track and a piece of it for you.
Yeah.
For you guys.
They made them. We had two different, an uphill and a downhill track, or not an uphill, a somewhat level track. Because when the wind would blow really hard, like you saw the news it did yesterday, we would race the track backwards uphill because it was easier to ride it uphill with these Vegas winds. So they made 2 specific tracks from motorcycle tracks. Like they took a wide section and carved it out, and then made a finish line. And they spent a lot of time out there. And through tires, their family, the whole track was lined with tires. So that was the start before we were civilized.
Lined with tires, it was so fun.
So
put someone in the tires.
Yeah,
it's just normal.
Oh yeah, that's where you learn to put your foot out, and you could drag a tire with your foot and hook it and get it to. You know, I learned by being on the receiving end of all this, so I learned some tricks from getting smoked and being in the back going, all right, these guys are pretty competitive.
Yeah, they say you learn more from losing than winning.
Oh, I learned a lot.
Yeah, well, I got more fists and semis than anybody on the planet Earth. So you're doing, what bike are you on when you're doing the downhill stuff or the motorcycle?
I had a Schwinn Stingray, and then right when we started racing, our buddy cracked his side hack, and it was a Gary Littlejohn. And I only weighed like 87. We used to do age times your weight. That's how. So I knew how much I weighed, because if you were 11 and under 92 pounds, you were lightweight. But if you were 12 and under 92, you'd be middleweight. So we all knew we'd have to stand on a scale.
It's like you're in the UFC.
Yeah, and if you put rocks in your pocket if you wanted to. Because the bigger classes were a little easier. Like lightweight, there was a lot of skinny, small kids that were 13, 14, and they're fast. And
this pre-NBA?
Oh yeah, this is. They started in '75 here, and then the NBA didn't come to Vegas until like 1980 or 7. Oh, excuse me, '78.
78.
The Winter Nationals were here, and they built
That's
we
right.
built the track. So they had a national here at Craig Road, and I don't have it all in front of me, but the tours came through and had their Winter Nationals here, and then NBA sort of saw that it was a market, and there was so many Rugrats because we're on an island. Vegas, it's not like 2 hours anywhere. It's 5 to get somewhere.
I never thought of Vegas as an island. Now that you say that.
Well, I mean, where do you go to race from here?
Yeah.
If you're not here, like you have to get somebody to drive you 4 or 5 hours. So, NBA Desert Surf, Mike Haig would put that together, and it was the NBA track and a skate park and batting cages and arcade, and that's where we just got full on. That was our first real starting gate. Then because we go to races and the gate would drop, we just take off, and you're all of a sudden you're starting in 7th, you know. So a couple of guys like Sam and some of the guys started bringing the technique back to us and working with us. And
One pedal at this point for sure.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Well, we would rock our bikes with the rubber band start. We'd rock our bikes to hope that when you let it go, you're on a forward
Wow.
push. So that was our trick. And then of course you watch the hand. We all wore goggles so we could stick our face next to the rubber band. And not unlike everybody else, then California started like that a few years earlier.
Yeah.
But
Even Dirty Fest started like that.
Oh yeah, that was.
I said to myself, because I started in '79, but I raced in '80, and there was, of course, there wasn't starting gate. So at Dirty Fest, I said, you know what? I'm either going to get hit by this thing or I'm going to get a great start. And I just went for it, and I'm like, oh, that was pretty good.
Because they'll let go. I mean, if you're farther down the end, they'll let go. It might wrap around you, but it's going to go sometime, so you might as well be in the lead.
Yeah, and I said, I'm going to get smacked or I'm going to get a great start. And I did fairly well.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
So, and I wanted to get to that, talk about Howell and, you know, Lawrenceville and some of the stuff I got to see, go race.
Nice.
Because
Howell's my local track.
yeah, I'd never seen trees like that coming from here. And
I thought the bike shop was huge.
And the mattresses around the trees.
Yep.
And then I thought, oh, you could hit something here solid. I mean, if they put mattresses up there, there's been problems. You know, they're fixing a problem.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
that tabletop, everybody tries to clear it, and if you got squirrely, that tree in the first turn, you're hitting it, and so somebody hit it, obviously.
Amazing.
And but it was really fun growing up here and racing, and then started to go to California. And it took a while for, besides Mike Aguilera, you know Mike,
Sure.
he went out early before all of us and went out and he was so fast. And their whole family raced. I raced all the other brothers.
Wow.
But he sort of went out on those tours with Eddie and the Torker team with Jason Jensen. And he really was the first one that was just factory dominant. He if it was Richie, Pete, and him, you know, Richie's the king, but Mikey was there. You know, like if Mikey had an inside gate and got a good start, I'm sure he could give him a run for his money. I don't know the final numbers, but I know Mikey was right there with Pistol and with Richie.
Wow.
And he had that quality.
So you're thinking he's the official first superstar of Vegas?
I would say so. I would say Sam Meek is because he was my hero.
FMF
and he was it. He never really got the credit that he deserved for being at the pinnacle. He influenced so many people. But Mikey really went out there and we'd race a trophy dash locally, and he was 13. And you didn't want him on the inside.
Wow.
He's going to be. I kid you not. Well, his dad was the gate starter.
Okay.
And they had it down. He was fast. He was strong. His brothers would clog you up. They were winners too. The 3 brothers were all winners.
Wow.
So I think Mikey was the first class act champion kind of guy. And then we sort of followed suit. But but he left early. But I think by the time he was maybe 14 or 15 or something. But he definitely led the way for us to see what you could do.
So Sam was factory FMF. So I'm trying to think who the first factory guy out here would have been. Maybe Sam because he was FMF, or
I'm assuming as factory as you could be.
Yeah.
I mean, he rode for the local Schwinn shop, and then it said FMF. So he rode for Schwinn, which was at the time like Ford, and he rode for them, and then had FMF. And I would say he was as factory as anyone.
Nice.
He could be. I'm guessing. So I mean, I felt like he was. I didn't know factory then either, but he was the stamp of perfection back then. So we learned a lot from him. I'd say that, and then maybe Mikey. I'd say Mike.
Yeah.
I would have to leave because that whole Aguilera group.
Oh, he looked ominous in his Torger uniform. I remember the pictures, in the magazines. I was like, wow, this dude looks like a rock.
Yeah.
He's a real solid guy. Tell me about the tours when they came through, when you got to see like Stu and Greg and all these people. Were you like, because for me, they were my superheroes. I didn't read comic books. I watched them, and their Batmobile was a Redline or a Torker or something. So when the tour came through, were you like, the bands roll in and everything? Did that take you?
It's interesting because we didn't really have I didn't grow up on the magazines.
Oh, no way, okay.
Because we didn't really we got our bike parts from Western Auto, or the cool ones, until the bike shop started doing BMX. But when everybody came through, we know there was fast guys, but we would look at, like, there was a guy named Jack Kent that could run with, like Dwayne Ballinger, like against factory, and we would race expert because we had gotten up to expert locally, but then we go, you race against those guys for real. Like I'm racing 12X against Eddie King and Brian Patterson, and I was just transitioning into learning how to come out of a gate, let alone, and those guys handed it to me, and then I started looking at who the fast guys were. And it was more about, actually, it sounds funny, but it was more about who was nice to us. We always watched the older classes. They weren't really, I don't want to say they weren't the pros, but looking back at some of the pictures, we're on the infield of these races, just staring at every bike part, everything. So just like everyone else, but we didn't really have a magazine outlet.
You mentioned the nice thing. My mother, her two favorite racers are Mike Miranda and Brian Patterson.
Oh, nice.
Because they were nice to me, and she was talking to them, they were nice to her. Mike always says to this day, say hi to your mom for me still. She's 82. Because that's her favorite racer. Because he's nice, like you said.
It made a difference on us.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I want to say the first guy I really thought, because he had a cool bike, was Tinker Juarez.
Nice.
Because he rode a nickel mongoose, but he ran his 88 and ran an American flag behind, and you'll see pictures of it. And I went, oh, this is, because number plates were just grabbed it out of the extra bin at the motorcycle shop. We ran green for novice, yellow for intermediate, and white for expert. So we would just get whatever we could, drill holes, make it work. And I looked at that and that's pretty pro. I always wanted a flag behind my plate. You'll see it. It's epic. In my mind, I think it was number 88. And I didn't know him. I just went, oh my gosh. Later, I think he was like 195 or something. But that stood out, and how dialed their bikes were, because our stuff was clapped out. Like it was, we didn't, you get FMF, think you had a light bike, but we didn't have a brake boss. So you're cutting a piece of plastic and putting your brake holes through, and they're wobbly, and just so you could pass inspection.
Right.
And you've seen the videos of Weinert Mountain.
Yeah. Okay.
I raced that as a 12-year-old.
Jesus.
And we just said, we're going to California. Somebody said, we're going to California. You jump in the back, you bring your 4116 or whatever's on your bike, probably an 18 on the back, whatever came with it.
Right.
And, we went there and it was that gnarliest downhill. Like I would have loved to do it, race it when I was 14 or 15 or, had some game.
Yeah.
But we started halfway down the hill and it was still gnarly. And I thought, I thought you'd go to California, we'd race at Van Nuys, we'd race at WSA,
Sure.
and you sort of had a chance. You at least you could look up and see the guys ahead of you, But we started racing those downhills. It was really paved the way for how I love to ride. I went, this is what I want to do.
From motorcycles, like you felt like you were.
The speed was I didn't really back then didn't really even have a spare gear. I had a bike that you raced and you rode and that was your bike. The bike had this gearing on it and I could have never changed it out with these, one piece cranks and a hard sprocket. It was just whatever your bike came with. And then once I loved what Mark Rink was saying about what his dad did for him with Corona. Because that's just salivating. There was jumps and it was fast. I didn't have to be gosh route, pull. I didn't have to have the pull. These guys, you might be stylish, but you look over and they're 3 bike lengths ahead. Who cares that you look good?
Yeah.
And you're going, well, I'm already in 7th.
Yeah. So
these.
And going back to our conversation, you were a style guy, you were a jump guy. Now you're looking at raw freaking power. Like Gosrow was not known for his style, just
didn't matter when he was
power.
2 bike. You go, oh well, he can't jump, and you go, well, he could hit his brakes.
Yeah,
and I think because there's power riders like in our class, rest in peace, was Don Jolie too, like just strong guys that would just and it made it easier. You said 5th in the semi, you'd be in this stacked, you'd be in this. Really, Nelson Chanity. I didn't even say Nelson, but like I said, there's a dozen guys. That terrible 10 was like my moto. Yeah. And then, really, that literally would be a 14 over open made somewhere. All those guys. Yeah. And somebody's not making
every
it.
weekend.
Every weekend.
Give or take 1 or 2 people.
And I didn't know how hard it was until what would happen is I would set myself up and know. I know 2 or 3 of those guys are not shutting down, and they're gonna get a good start. Because I would try and slingshot.
You ever see Don Jolie's faces in those pictures? He was going for it. Yeah, like he was on the limit. For sure.
And when he was small, when he rode for Robinson, he was strong too. That's like right. He wasn't tall in stature, but he was. You look over, you might get your best start ever. It's like Roop. I raced Eric Roop later on in life, and I thought, we're doing this vet pro class for fun. And he came out to Nellis, and I grew up on that gate, Nellis BMX, and I could just time it, snap, and I got the best start. We raced some vet pro fit masters, whatever it was called.
He says hello, by the way. He texted me while on the way down.
And I got the best start of my life, and I'm snap, and I look over, and he doesn't even move over on you. He gets ahead of you and moves over. Like it's even, and I go, wow, you beat somebody on their home track, home gate, not just the track where you might know an inside line or there.
Sure.
And Polson did that to me too, where I just went, what do you do? And Brian Patterson, when he was on his way, because he charged through 17X on his way to his pro titles. So when he came through, he was dominant, but dominated against Eddie and against these guys and Lee. Like they were all Andy Patterson. There's 4 or 5. There's a semi right there that if you're in there, you're going, well, I better wait till 3 of those guys don't shut down.
Yeah.
Block up a little bit, and then hopefully
you hope the last corner
somebody's off their pedals.
The last turn or something.
But I don't want to say I made a living at it, but I knew how to ride in 4th with the best of them, and that sort of got me through. Because once you go into those classes, you had to get through 16th, 8th, quarters. So the worlds were 205 riders, and you make a main, and you're like, hey, I'm in the main.
Yeah.
Like, you know how many people aren't in the main? You know, there's a whole bunch of guys. It's funny because I looked at one of those results and saw that Farside won like 12 novice. And you look and you look back and you go, this power rider is just in his infancy. You know, like if you could see what that guy, like if you could take a 12 novice first place and just, you can't discount it because you go, he probably had 100 guys in his class. Mm-hmm. So you have to win through or stay up or pressure's so much different. I mean, you get on that gate, you start thinking, start looking around, start counting. Oh, Timmy Judge, I didn't even say Timmy Judge. You know, I'll keep
Pat
Sheridan.
Arguably,
you know,
okay, everybody has a tough class. Everybody, right? 15, 16. Your class is arguably one of the hardest of all time. No joke. You can argue that for sure. Yeah. Because everybody says, well, my 14X class, I had Shelby James and all that. Yeah, but like I look at your class and how many went on to become just icons. Like it's ridiculous.
They were, and there was, I don't want to say there was, I was on the NBA circuit because I was regional and I could afford that, and I had a local track chasing points, so it made sense. Yeah. So I'd jump and race like in ABA if it was here, and then we started getting a track. So we were always NBA. ABA didn't have a big presence here, and then we'd go, but then every time people started chasing points going to nationals, like as people got older and faster, we started the ABA circuit, and you know, it was a different kind of riding. I'd run like a 45-17 on some of those Cow Palace tracks, and just with short cranks, and you only needed 4 pedals. So you didn't, you know, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. It was better being second or third with the, you know, spin out gear than 7th trying to run a 45. You know, so, and I didn't have that kind of power. So if you could get in there, mix it up, a couple guys slip their pedals, you could transfer through.
And everyone says that it's the ABA rodeo series. Like everybody that I know says that. You know.
Yeah, it was different because we started full contact. So none of that intimidated me ever. And if somebody put their elbow out, I knew that they knew I was coming. Yeah. So maybe next race you go, he thinks I'm going to be on the inside. You go outside. You know, you just work it differently because you have to get fourth. I was racing for fourth. You know, I mean, you win some when people fall, but you know, if you don't get fourth, you're watching.
Yeah, Moeller taught me that when I first moved out here. He said, listen, stop focusing on all this stuff. Fourth or better. Fourth or better is all you need. Chris taught me that. And so when I go to Dirty Fest this year, I'm like, oh, it's third or better. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
So I get third or better. Third or better. So, yeah. I'm going to tell Gary. Gary beat me in my quarter. I'm going to give him a hard time later.
Oh, and he's the best.
Oh, he's the best.
He's
for
the best.
Sure. Like, that episode's coming up next. But, so when do you start to chase a national thing, right? Because it's so, you live on an island.
Yeah.
Vegas is an island. I learned that from you today. When do you start to go, man, I'm chasing my district points. Now I want to.
The weekend I turned 16, I had a $750 1969 Datsun pickup. No air, nothing. And the weekend I turned 16, I grabbed a buddy and we took off to Northern California and raced. Because my parents are my dad's from San Jose, my mom, they're all from that area. So I got to race like Watsonville, the school, there's Aptos, the Hayward. I got to ride.
Grass Valley even?
No, I never raced Grass Valley that I know of. I mean, I might have gone to the track, but I went to their jump spot. I had a buddy Joe Lamarche, that I had met when I was like 14. I met him when I was like 14 because my family, some of my family still have a sister that still lives there and up in Vacaville area. So I would go racing up there, 14 expert against Ronnie and Anderson, and I didn't even mention those guys yet, but I bought a Patterson because all of a sudden I'm seeing Richie just, I learned a lot from him speed rolling on some of these.
Mm-hmm.
So I really liked that NorCal scene, and I would go and stay Jeff Putney, guys that you wouldn't know of, but I immersed myself, and I raced all the local races. So I got points, and then I'd stay up 2 weeks till I ran out of money or couches. We'd sleep in the back of my pickup and park at the gate. And as soon as you hear somebody unlocking the gate, that's when you get up.
Wow.
And so we really had a good time traveling. And once I got 16, that's when I don't want to say I got fast, but that's when I had goals. I want to be number one.
In the class that you had to survive.
Yeah, true.
So through survival, you get fast. There's nothing. You're either out the back or you're just upping your game and upping your game.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I didn't even mention Donnie Atherton. Yeah, so I bet you I can name 20 guys, and I apologize for ones I didn't, but everybody, like, there's guys. I saw Ken Battle. Did you see Ken at Dirty Fest? Ken Battle is his name.
No.
Tartan Bikes, like guys that it's like a Doug Christopher where
I know.
man, they didn't get the credit, but I guarantee you didn't get a good start. They were gone. Like they knew the tracks, they were fast, they knew how to keep you behind them. So there was a whole tier that I was in that we'd all chase those four. So there was always the marquee guys. And then we would get in, and I knew who everybody was by that time because I knew their style. I knew what it took. Is this guy loves to run a big gear? Do I need to get inside him? That's when I wanted to start getting. When I chased points, I accidentally got fast because I started going and staying at Tom and Doug's house.
Nice.
And I'd race I'd drive down after school on Friday. I'd race, if I got there, I'd race Friday night early enough, then I'd race Saturday night, Sunday, and then home for school on Monday.
Wow.
And I did that, I would say, if it wasn't every weekend, it was every weekend except a couple.
Holidays or
yeah,
something.
and
weird.
that's what I did, and I'd just go stay on their couch. And at Dirty Fest, we had a reunion up at their mom's house, where I literally lived. I lived up there, and you don't really ever get the chance to thank those parents that did so much for some guy from Vegas laying on your couch 12 weekends of a summer, that, and riding with them, and forget giving them food money or gas money. You just I don't want to say you took it for granted, but I was appreciative. But now to be able to thank them and let them know that, man, you really changed my life.
Yeah.
What I do want to say is, even though it was stacked, but the best thing I got out of it was all the friendships. Because you see how lucky we are that we can, I could talk. I know we're on a time frame, but we could walk out in the garage. We could walk out in the garage and we could talk about all the different. Who's that guy? Who's that guy? And I'll tell you what. I might not know him that well, but I'll tell you what gear they ran or what shoes they ran. Because if they were in front of me, I had to stare at it, and it was, there were some really good people. Keith Gaynor, that was that NBA, because I chased that NBA national number, and but I did it with the Mickey Finn show. Thanks, Pop. I'll give you a Mickey Finn sticker before you leave.
I would be honored. Thank you.
So I just worked at a bike shop and a gas station, and then he would give me $20 and I would take off, and I didn't have any support.
We used to shower on the golf courses.
Oh, perfect.
When the showers or the sprinklers came on, we'd run out with soap, and then we would sleep in the stairwells of the hotels, because if you got in at 3 a.m. and got out at 7, nobody's going to come through those stairwells that early. That's what we did. And then we go to get the buffet plates, you put it in your shirt, pull it out at the next stop, and so much it got beat up. Like, that's summer tour survival.
That's awesome. And you guys were sort of handcuffed in the winter.
Yeah.
Right? So by the time you hit summer, it took you a couple of weeks, unless you had rollers.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, how did you keep it how'd you keep it?
I used to
'Cause
do
you didn't.
sprints in an indoor horse track.
Oh, you see, you had to do something
Yep.
to stay fast.
And then go to the Winter Nationals in Chandler to get out of the snow and land. Robbie Morales would pick me up. He's sunburned, him and his dad. And then go to the Columbus, Ohio race because it was inside a hotel, indoor.
Mm-hmm.
You would drive through the fucking snow to get there, and that was it in Ohio.
The Christmas Classic,
Yeah,
right? Oh
yeah.
yeah, that was
So that was
unbelievable.
but how do you train for that? Because
Yeah.
you got to go full blown 100%, but you've been on rollers and sprinting a horse track.
Exactly.
It's hard,
Exactly. And then guys like Rich or a lot of New Jersey guys, and back east, we raced some of those tracks, and they were long and wide and fast, and you couldn't hide. You couldn't 3-pedal corner, shut them down,
Yeah.
foot out. You go inside, put your foot out to shut somebody down. They're just gonna rail. And these guys
That
are.
was the NBL thing. So
Yeah.
it was the ABA was the rodeo circuit,
Yeah.
and the NBL was however golf course circuit where it's this open thing, and you can just have these giant tracks to do all your moves on. Yeah, the
Yeah.
high lows were like the
What's-
NBL Grands first turn high lows or whatever, where you would just jack people.
Oh, and right now, this weekend is South Park.
Yes.
Right, were you there when the lightning struck on I think on Sat. It was. I think we raced in North Park one day and
In
South Park.
I
the
went the
second.
year after and I broke my brake pad and went right off the turn. Who breaks a brake pad? I did. It was weird. Yeah. I missed that year. My dad was weird. He never really wanted to drive far. What was in it for him? Well, Dad, there's a antique, auto show. Well, then we'll go. Like, Dad, there's nothing. Well, then
Morales
we're
is
not going.
cooler. You should have introduced him to the cooler. You should have. You should have said, "Listen,
cooler.
here's the." You should have said, "Dad, you guys meet.
Yeah.
See you at 6 p.m."
Yeah,
All
because
right?
Robbie and I used to drive, before Robbie had a license, I would drive to Long Island, pick him up, bring him back to Jersey, we would ride all weekend, drive him back to Long Island, possibly stay there, and then I'd drive back to Jersey again. But he didn't have a license, he still lived at home.
Wow. Well, that's like here, the commitment when it's hot like crazy. What do you do?
What do you do?
You can't. You just go. You jump in a pool. We would just jump in the pools at the casinos, and there was always open pools. You'd ride. All right, check for security. Jump in, cool off, soak your shirt, and then take off. Jump in the fountains and steal some coins for lunch. When you said sticking your
Like buffet plate.
yeah buffet plate, that's classic.
Yeah, that was a good one. So let's talk about what you're most well known for, your CW days, obviously.
Yeah.
How do you hook that up and where we left off to the bridge to CW? So now you're starting to travel
Yes.
and you're going to NorCal and you're seeing people like when I first moved here, I went to Lemoore and I was like, who are these people? Who's Dean Lucia? I never seen him, But you're starting to, now your speed's coming up. How do you get hooked up with Roger? How does that all go down?
My forte was downhills, and I was riding. I would jump, but I could compete, if that makes sense, with those guys with the downhill because I could get going, and I'd love to go fast. So, and maybe a lot of the power guys would spin out, or fast guys are fast. They're going to win no matter what. But I could compete better, and so I think I finished behind Atherton in 14 over open in 79 or something and that was, and they even spelled my name wrong. They put Tracy, so, and I just had it for the tracks like that where I could, nobody knew who I was. I just Levi's and my Mickey Finchow jersey, and I happened to just have a really good weekend. And Miranda had seen me jump before, and so we had
Mike's
I think he's rad. I see the stuff he did, way more than I could have ever done, and he just is so rad. And we just had a kinship, and we would race each other. And I think he was thinking about going pro at some time, and he gave me a number plate. He gave me a Sabre number plate. He brought me in and
Tell
said,
me you still have
"This
it."
is Roger." Oh no, I use it. Yeah, I use it as my dustpan.
Perfect size.
Boy, it was huge. And he gave me a number plate, and introduced me to Roger, and he said, okay, I'll watch you this weekend, kind of thing, you know. And then that weekend, John Kerr gave me a full page shot, jumping the water jump, and I got second in Fortune over Open against Pistol. Oh, Lundy ended up winning, but it was, you know, Pistol, Lee Medlin on that track.
Yeah.
You know,
What track was this?
At Corona.
Corona. Okay.
So that was the day that I met Roger, and I just happened to not shut down, and I sort of blew into the corner and sort of blew up the situation, I guess.
Sure.
I got inside and held on for a second, and then he goes, "Oh, well, this guy got second at 17X," and or excuse me, in Fortune over Open, and there were some guys in there, you know, and so a second and a full page picture in the magazine, and the full page picture is worth way more than a second. You know, second was just the best I ever had done, or maybe we all get lucky. We race here and there, but that's when they started watching me, and then I was on the NBA circuit and doing well, and they came by and at a race and said, "Hey, would you wear?" They gave me this T-shirt, CW T-shirt, and a pair of Mike's old pants, and I'm running a Schwinn Sting with CW stickers, and I'm putting them on my helmet, and I got a picture with the CW stuff on riding a Sting, and then they went, "Okay, well, we need to." So they put me on the co-sponsored team, and then I ended up making some travel mains, Texas, Amarillo, or somewhere.
Nice.
Yeah, where I said somebody, because I was so regional that I was never going to get any better than just being a good regional guy. So, heck, by New Year's, I was racing the World Championships.
Wow.
Like with somebody, and flew there. You know, I mean, I could only go as far as you could drive, and so it really changed. You know,
What was your first CW? Because you were around when the phase were around, right? Because Jared Justice was at my local track.
oh yeah, good guy,
God,
nice
one of
guy,
the
yeah,
greatest ever
and a
come
good
out
dude
of
too.
Oh, he's amazing.
Yeah.
So I remember he would have all the phase stuff, and I remember you were in a Super BMX thing with a phase or something.
Yeah, or bicycles and dirt.
Bicycles and dirt.
Yeah, you know, I started with the sexiest bike you could ever have, which was the CW the brass plated CW
Oh, wow.
with a teardrop top tube, and you saw it, you go, if I'm going to build one bike, you know, because I tell you, I love these collectors, because if I did what they do, I would be broke. Because
You want it all.
if I get one, I want 10. So I have good friends like Mike Cadmary, who grew up here with me with CW. He has the best collection in the country of CW.
Wow.
So I get to see him and stuff, but it was a brass plated CW first time somebody ever handed me new parts. Like, here's a DX pedals. Like, DX pedals were big, and I was still running one-piece cranks, like because I bought them myself.
Yeah.
And they gave me, you know, an armful of gear, and I started going to the nationals and making mains.
What was your first CW race? Official, not the T-shirt.
When we drove all the way to, maybe it was Lubbock. We drove all the way to Texas, and I was co-sponsored, and I think I got like third in the open, and everybody was there. You know,
I think I know who
Yeah.
won that Lubbock race. Charles Williams did, I think.
Whatever it was, we all got in the van. I'm like, I just got to go to Lubbock, you know, and I'm
Who
like,
was in the van?
it was always. I have a picture of it was always Andy Zerzo. Sometimes it was Billy Griggs.
Oh, I love my former
and-
landlord.
Oh yeah, there's a whole group. You know, there was a whole group. Danny Steplight, all the kids that couldn't drive.
Chicken
were
George
older.
back then or no?
No, this was way before. But and then he stepped in the van. Roger stepped in the van and said, "Let's hear it for our new factory member." And like Debbie was there,
Yep.
and they all applauded, and I was like, I just got goosebumps
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they were so cool to me. And then that's when it took off. So I don't know when my first real factory race was, but that was I'll never forget that moment where I went, oh my gosh, I'm on a factory team. Because being here and spending my own money and lining up with the guys that flew in and had somebody with the right gear and the right tire, I wasn't jealous. I just went, how do I get that?
Yeah.
So I never took any of the co-sponsor deals. Like, oh, we're going to start this. Maybe we'll try something.
Terry cables.
Yeah, because I always wanted. My dad paid for my races, so why would I wear somebody else's stuff? So that's why I was so adamant about Levi's and Mickey Finn show, is because family business. My dad's cool as crap, and we all had, that support around us, and everybody. I mean, how many people don't know the Mickey Finn show? And it wasn't a factory team.
Yeah,
I was the only. I was factory. I guess I was. Factory home. And everybody treats my dad good, and that's the fun part of it is I did it for the family. Like if your parents had a bike shop, you'd ride for your parents.
Yeah.
So, but when Mike started giving me parts, and Roger, and I went, this is opportunity to travel. My dad was 100% because I'd still just run a Mickey Finn sticker and have one on my jersey.
That's pretty
and
cool.
Some of the results say CW/Mickey Finn show, because I would always make sure that if I signed myself up, that they got credit. Because and if it wasn't for our parents letting us, like you moving across the country or traveling, or you taking off and driving to New York and picking up Robbie's, like there's no phones. There's this is where now you watch this America's Most Wanted, and they go, oh, they were in the bushes in New Jersey on the turnpike, and you're like, oh crap, I stopped there and took a leak.
Yeah.
You're going
putting people in wood chippers and killing them. Yeah.
Exactly. But that's what chiseled us, I guess.
Yeah, my parents did not understand. I'm going to move to California. And my mom's like, well, what if you fail? I'm like, that's not an option.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Brian brought me in, and I stayed at his house, and that was it. I wanted to live the dream. I wanted to see what it was like.
And there's what I really liked was when you talk to Todd Corbett, because I'm a fan of him and Big E, and even more so of Lenny Baticki, because he doesn't get the credit.
Yeah.
But if you talk to the guys, they give him the credit. They're like, this guy believed he believed in me. And you're like, who's this? Your parents are going, who's this 21-year-old? And that believes in you. You're like, that's weird. But in our world, that's somebody that believes in you. And then how many people thank them, and especially Big E, for mentoring them.
Yeah.
And gave them the ride or the co-sponsor or gave them the encouragement or the carrot. Like if they had Olympics, what would you have done if they had Olympics and you were primed to be 19 when they hit?
Try like hell.
What would you do? I mean,
try and hell like get at the
you'd cut off your mother, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you would just think what it's become.
Yeah.
And how cool that is to watch. Like Connor from here, he's as nice. I played pickleball with him the other night. I'm like, does anybody see this? This gold medal guy that's just kicking my ass, It's just we're all friends. That's the thing, is we're all friends.
Sure.
And that's been the coolest takeaways. I've had some great bikes and some cool pictures here and there, but the biggest thing is about the friends. But
you get to talk to your heroes. I was a magazine guy because it's snowy and it's crappy weather, and I'm just living through the magazine, so I knew every guy. Charlie Williams had tear-offs on his goggles, and all this stuff. But you remember, and then when I had some run-ins with Greg Hill. We hate each other for a while, but we're great friends now. But you get to talk to your heroes, and it's cool. And now we're all grown up. I'm 58 next week, and it's like, everybody's cool. I don't give a crap if I had butted heads with them. And Dirty Fest and Frogtown brings you to here's my 1985 National. But now I'm old enough to talk to everybody and have a good time.
And I agree with you 100%. And this didn't happen for a lot of years. I didn't know anybody gave a crap about if it wasn't for the collectors that sort of kept it alive for the old guys, because we didn't know, or I didn't know, eBay and guys are flipping bikes. I was just working. I got a work in show business, and I didn't know that anybody gave a hoot. And then you start meeting these guys, and you go, this dude's way more passionate than me. What's he on?
Yeah.
And I go, he's on the same freaking team I am. Like,
Yeah.
talk about BMX. And you sit down with somebody and apologize for burning your ear, but
No.
this is what we love to do. Like I'll say something about Gary. We'll travel to Dirty Fest, 6 hours, whatever it is. Not a minute of silence. And I can't even tell you what he talked about. It could be BMX who did this, and then on the way back, we're talking about who we ran into, and you're like, he was there. Oh, I didn't see him. Like, you know, like I mentioned, like a Ken Battle, where I went, that guy was in our pack. Like, he was, you know, so good to see him.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that you get to share your life with, because those were cool times.
Yeah.
And certainly not living in the past, because we have roofs over our head, and you know. But I tell you what, it's better than doing bad stuff, you know, or collecting bad stuff, or you know. I love my stuff, you know, and I try not to keep it in the front of the house. But you go in my garage, and I'm all smiles. I'm like, I go, that picture, that's from this, and it's just it triggers so much happiness that it makes, like, I can go into work and just smile on my face and go, you know, I got to, like, Dirty Fest, I was on a high for 2 weeks.
What I did, which was odd, and I texted Mike Miranda today, I said, do you realize Dirty Fest transformed me into wanting to race modern BMX now? It did.
Nice.
So I did Dirty Fest and did well, and then I went and did a state race, got off first, and then I go, oh, okay, and now I'm racing modern off of Dirty Fest. It's supposed to be like, let's bring the modern guys to Dirty Fest and let them race old school. Well, I'm like, you know what, let me see what's out there in the new world. Yeah. So now I'm racing modern because of Dirty Fest in Frogtown. How crazy is it?
Yeah,
there's split.
Oh, wow. I got to stay in it with X Games, with working with TJ and some of the riders, and seeing how fun it was, because those guys are rock stars. You know, we begged for getting a ride. They were rock stars, and being an older guy, most of them didn't even know I rode. So my passion was probably way over the top. They're like, "What? Who's this guy with a pump and a tube?" And I'm like, "Doesn't matter. I'm here. What do you need?" You know, like they're like, it just.
But then when they find out, they're like, "Dude, you're a Hall of Famer. You're a god."
No, it got to there, and then seeing the Olympics, and then seeing all the stuff that's happening, you have to appreciate it. I went and introduced myself to Danny Redmags, and I follow him now, and I see his mains, and I watch him, and I watched the Grands this year, and made sure I saw his mains when he went for cruiser, and I watched his 20, and I'm appreciative of these guys that kick butt, and then they share it with us, and then it goes back and forth, and it's still fun to run it. I can go to a 14-year-old kid and talk BMX like you would.
Yeah.
You would just be like, "So how'd it go? How'd you take that line?" And you're racing 55 and over, and you're going, "Okay, now manual this," and you're like, "Nope." But okay, what's your second option? Okay, pedaling and just, you know, going over it. So what's your favorite part of it?
The modern?
Yeah.
I still have a good gate start.
Yeah, there you go.
All the muscle memory. It's. I did jiu-jitsu for 28 years. I still do. It's so hard. BMX is 30 seconds. If you can't do 3 or 4 30-second sprints with everything you got, get the adrenaline rush and go home, that's the greatest thing ever. It's short, and it seems like it's still fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. And old versus new, the fast guys are going to find a way to win. If you throw them back in our time, I guarantee they'd figure it out too.
Yeah.
You know, so that's
look at
what's
Charlie's
fun.
killing it. You know,
I know.
Gary Loren's killing it. Like, they still have it.
Yes.
That trips me out when people still have it.
Yes.
Like, Mickey Lundy still does well at Dirty Fest.
Oh, well, I was following when he was doing his jumping, and I went, I know that guy when he's crazy jumper. You know, I mean, he was. There you go. That tier that weren't Mike Polson or the Eddie or Medlin, but you know, there's a whole line of guys where you slip your pedal, they're coming for it.
Yeah.
You know,
Your class was amazing.
So
is that legit time? That's not legit time, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought you had till 1:30.
Well, I should go here shortly.
Okay.
But I would, man, if I didn't have to work today, I would have.
Well, see what happens, everybody. The world gets in the way of BMX fun. Awesome episode. Thanks to Tracer. He's an icon, absolute legend. Enjoyed having him there. We got to do a part 2, and we're going to dip into the garage if we got 5 minutes, and I'm going to go see it. I want to do a whole thing on that too. So next up, if you stay tuned, in another... Oh shit, I'm supposed to be with Gary Laurent right now. Anyway, we're headed over to hang out with Gary Laurent, another Vegas icon. So thanks to Tracer for the amazing interview. And this will be up on YouTube. Go over to YouTube, BMX Legends, Lunch with Legends, BMX Legends Society. Got a lot on my mind right now. So it'll be under BMX Legends Society, Lunch with Legends. There you go. Over at YouTube. This episode will go up there. So thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned. Another half hour. We'll kick it back again with Gary Laurent. Double down Vegas style. Thank you, Tracer. You're
Awesome.
the man.
Thanks, guys.